Hey there, Read 581. This is Dr. Keisler. So let's start off first by thanking you for your patience. I know that there's been some, um, lag time in me being able to go through all of these resources and respond to you. I think for the first 2 weeks, we were doing good, and then some of us got to the end of this week and went ahead to next week, week 3, and that's where things started to fall apart a little bit. So let me apologize for that. But let's go ahead and go through and take inventory of sort of where we are now and where we need to be. So first off, I think some of the issues or misunderstandings that we're experiencing is because some of the class went ahead. So that was my kind of original concern with having the whole course open, is that several of you would get ahead of me and that I wouldn't be prepared to respond to your questions or kind of understand where these issues were coming from. And that is exactly what happened this week. So we are on week 2 right now. And then today, Tuesday, we rolled into week 3. So I see now that in Dr. Glasswell's screencast, this Welcome to Week 3, she records it last semester, and last semester she had week 3 and week 4 in the same thread. I only opened week 3 for you. I had not yet viewed that screencast, so I was not aware of that. So now I've opened up week 4, and you can see the other resources that were being referenced here. So many of the questions that I received in the past day or so come from this central issue, that week 3 and week 4 used to be together, and they're together in this screencast right here. And in our class, they're separate, and you only had access to week 3. So now we have access to both. And what I'm actually going to do by the end of today is I'm going to open the whole course. So I'm going to do that to perhaps avoid this issue. You don't really need the entire course open just yet. You need the entire course open more so at the end of this week into next week, but that's okay. I'm going to open all of it. There is a lot of information packed onto this course site. I'm going to be quite honest with you. Going through it and trying to find some of the things that are referenced in the screencast, it gives me anxiety, and I need to take a deep breath, and I need to have a pad of paper out next to me, and I need to start writing things down. There are a ton of resources for you in here. Everything that you do need is there. It's just a matter of finding it. And like I said in my emails, I didn't design the course, so I'm also picking through it with you. It's also not kind of the way my brain might set it up. So I appreciate and I understand some of the frustration with trying to find stuff. I see that stuff is perhaps not labeled the same way that it is discussed in the screencast. And so I find myself also not being able to find certain things. There's a lot of acronyms being used, and it's hard to keep track of all of those acronyms. And so, yeah, so do what I'm doing. So take a deep breath. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. So I know that the whole course was opened up because, Dr. Glasswell said it is a lot of work and you might want to get started. But in all honesty, the only thing that you can really be started with or spending time with is going through these resources on the bottom, right? And so they're here for you and they've been opened and you can go to them as you need. But the bulk of the work in terms of working with the students and doing all the analysis is happening starting this week. So really, in terms of being ahead of yourself, just take it week by week. That's really all you can do. And it's all you're going to be able to do once you start working with the kids. You're not going to be able to necessarily plan weeks in advance, but you want to kind of be that 1 week ahead with your resources, right? So you want to be working with your student, but know, okay, if this week, week one, I'm working on motivation, I know next week I'm going to be going into doing the some of the QRI work. So, let me be ready for that. So pretty much past the week ahead, the 1 week ahead, you're not working that far ahead in the course itself. So let's take stock of where we are now. You should have gone through week one. Week one is kind of getting your head back into assessment. It's overviewing what you're going to be doing. It's talking about the challenges and some of the issues and some of the things you need to consider when you're assessing, diverse issues, diverse students. Part of the reason there's so many resources here is that students all struggle with reading for different reasons. And so we're giving you everything that we think you could need here. Some of it you won't use. In fact, probably a lot of it you won't use, but different students will be using different pieces. And so it's all here for you. When you get, and I'll remind you of this again, but you probably also want to start thinking of how you can download lots of these resources into maybe your own personal Dropbox or your own personal Google Drive, because these are things that you'll want to keep. This is a great resource for reading specialists, even if you don't think you're going to use them immediately. At some point, if you're going to be a reading specialist, you will be using these types of resources out in the field. So week one, your overview, right? So week two here is where there's kind of a deep dive into the QRI and kind of Dr. Glasswell's assessment philosophy. So I think there was a little bit of confusion here as well. Dr. Glasswell talks about this idea of top-down assessment. You may or may not have thought about it this way before, but it is it's how the class is going to be run, and it's what we should be doing. It's what we all be doing, what we all do out in the field. It's not a different philosophy per se than what Dr. Gomez did with you in 516. I actually, I have her, I'm on her 516 now, and I can see it. And I know, I think the majority of you had her. The 516 that she had for your class is largely based on a 516 I had taught the previous year. And so it matches. The difference here is that it's not that in 516 we teach you this bottom-up approach to assessing. It's that the purpose of that class is to learn how to do all the assessments, and so we start from the bottom up. So that's not to say that that's an assessment philosophy of starting from phonemic awareness and phonics and moving up to comprehension. But when you're teaching a course, you need to come up with a way to focus students on the types of assessments, and that's what makes sense for a course like that. Your purpose is different here, right? So in 516, you were practicing the assessments, and largely we kind of broke them up into the big five in reading. What you're doing here now is you have the reader in front of you, and so you're trying to figure out, as Dr. Glasswell shared, number one, can this student read, right? If they can read, what can they read? What level can they read at? If they can't read, or even if they can read, what is it that they can do and what is it that they can't do? And so you have to start from the big task, right? From the top. So the top is the reading of the whole text. That is different from what we did in 516 because the purposes of the course were different. So you have knowledge of all of these assessments now that you're in 581. And so we're asking you to start with kind of the whole reader in front of you. So the very first question that you have to answer is, what can they read, right? And so that's why we're starting with the comprehension piece. You're going to figure out if they can read. You're going to try to level them. You're going to figure out what their independent reading level is, their instructional reading level, and their frustration level. That's where you need to start. And as Dr. Glasswell points out, that is critical for these weeks 3 and week 4 piece, because that is going to help you design the rest of your intervention, right? It's going to tell you how deep you need to go. It's going to tell you how many other assessments you need to do. Some of you will not drill down to the phonics level with your student. Many of you will, but that's going to be based on what you get back from this examination and analysis of what they can do with a whole piece of text. All right, so we went through kind of what you needed to do with week 1, what you need to do with week 2. So in terms of this philosophy and getting into the QRI process, you've got a screencast here, explains the differences between 5 and 6. Most of you have 6. And so really it was just kind of the rationale behind, they changed some of the total accuracy percentages. And so if you're with the 6, that's kind of what you're going to work off of. So the resources that you need for QRI can be found here, right? So they have the updated fluency norms. So you should really be familiar with this. So week 3, which is where we are now, right? Today is just the beginning of week 3. Week 3 talks a little bit more about what you're going to do that first meeting. Most of you have in your paperwork, so you are ready to get started. If I do not have your paperwork, you cannot work with your student yet. So please make sure, I've seen it coming in quite a bit the past 2 or 3 days. So please get that uploaded. Any work that you do with a student, if I don't have your paperwork and then we'll cross-reference it, I won't count. So please make sure that you have that in before you start your work. So in this week 3 piece, you're more help with kind of the process of assessment. You go through here and you see an example of the thought process and working with a particular student. Think about it as almost like a little bit of a case study that you're walked through. You have resources for the writing assessment that you will probably, or that you will want to give during that first session. And then you have this quiz. I've had several questions about the quiz. I've gone through the questions on the quiz, and it really does cover a lot of the assessment basics that you should have down as you prepare to go out into the field and build your expertise as an assessment expert, right? So as I look through the questions, I'm seeing things about, what's instructional level and what are the cut scores? What is, what are the total accuracy scores for independent level reading? I'm seeing questions that ask you kind of why you might want to give a particular assessment, what a particular assessment is. It's a lot of basics and it's all multiple choice. So you have until the end of this week to take that quiz. Yes, the quiz counts for your grade, but also think about the questions in that quiz as a study guide for yourself. So if you're looking at that question and you're like, I have no idea, you've got like 90 minutes, I think it is, to take the quiz. Stop, go into Titanium, find the resource, go down here. I mean, I'm not expecting you, and I don't know that these are Dr. Glasswell's expectations either, but I'm not expecting that you just know this off the top of your head and that you're done with this in 20 minutes. So you see the question, you go in here, find the resource, poke around. You have an hour and a half to finish this quiz. It's all multiple choice. And so you'll have an idea of what you need. All right, I'm actually going to run out of screencast time here. So I'm going to stop and I'll pick up on another one.